Boy, it's going to start getting hot down here. It's already getting hot down here. Summertime.
Well, good Saturday afternoon, friends. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Jobu Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. I don't know what you had for your game plan for today, but hey, we're going to have a little bit of fun. Stuart has been joining me the last couple of weeks, and we've been doing fantasy football talk. He's trying to convert me into a fantasy football player and let me know it's nothing to fear about rooting for players on another team. And of course, he's got me, dealing with fans from other teams. So I thought today we would do something different than we've been doing.
For us today, and we will leave you with I can't do it. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Hey.
Thing sucks. 5, 4, 3. That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks again for watching. We'll leave you with Sting and a cut off his new album. Take it away.
Well, so we're going to be doing it live today. Stuart has been passing the Dutchie from the left-hand side and is joining us here today. And we're going to see where this leads. I see Stacy Schubert on one of our winners last night for our Joe Barty. Stacy, we'll be getting that out to you by Monday. I see Joel. What's up, Joe? And Ramon Perez. How are you guys doing? Welcome to our show. And I have my man Stuart. Stuart, how are you doing, man?
Doing good, sir.
Stuart,
I love that song, by the way.
Which song? Pass
the Dutchie to the left.
This is what YouTube kills me because I would love to be able to use like some old clips and stuff. I would love to sample that, but the YouTube police literally. I've got the mic check with Mike, because I always do the mic check, from Salt and Pepper. Half the time on my live streams, my live streams actually get demonetized for that 3-second clip of that. It gets to be ridiculous. Now, Stu drug in something else with him today. He brought in his man, Corey. Corey, how are you doing?
Doing all right. Glad to be here.
Man, he's got that bass in that voice. Do you hear that? Man, he sounds kind of scary. And I see here wearing a Packer jersey. Stu, what are you doing to me, man? Stu.
I'm trying to hit that community aspect of fantasy football. It's like Bogart touched on last week with the players leaving it on the field. Yeah. Same way with fan bases. Hate the team, not the person. And Roz, as he's known in Discord, Brother Roz, who's going to be one of the main guys helping in the fantasy football aspect that members will have access to. It's just one of those good people in the community.
Okay,
we've become good friends, so I brought him on today to try to see if we can come from a different perspective than me beating up the same tree, and see if you can't crack your brain a little bit and get you a little bit more comfortable to having some fun with fantasy.
Well, I kid because I love Roz. I have no problem with fans of other teams and things. Hell, I live in the Washington football team, or whatever they are, because they lost football team now. They can't even consider themselves a football team. Who knows what they're going to be? But of course, I love to talk a whole bunch of trash. So you're actually a diehard Packer fan?
So I am an Alaskan. Originally.
Okay.
So we don't have a team, and Seattle actually sent a written FU when we tried to buy them.
They don't like the cold.
So when I was a little kid, way back in, I want to say right around Marino's rookie or second year, I don't know, something about the team just grabbed me, and I'm a diehard number one every time, if I can, root Dolphins fan. But my dad's entire family is from Milwaukee, Green Bay area, and we are all owners.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this jersey I wore for two reasons. One, to kind of show that you can have a little bit of leeway in that fandom.
Okay.
Even though if Green Bay's playing Miami, Green Bay can go down every time.
Green Bay can go down every time.
But
Okay.
but I also wore it because it's Gabaja B.A.M, and I watched one of your videos, and I played on the line in high school.
Okay.
In Alaska, we don't have college or peewees.
Okay.
So I only got to play my high school career. But I've always been a huge fan. I played in the Army intramural team. We played other militaries, and I played a nose tackle. I played defensive end there too, even though I was a little guy.
Yeah.
It's just something about that defense, something about just hitting people and making the other team lose.
It definitely takes a special type person to be a defender, man. Because you're going to get hit, especially on that defensive line, but you've just got to like that aggression and being able to take it out on that ball carrier, or when you're lucky enough to get that quarterback and take it out on him. I look at football today, and unfortunately they've taken out the joy to me of being able to jack up a quarterback, where you can't touch him and things. But for those who don't know, we've got my man Stuart has started our Discord channel, and Corey is one of the fantasy experts. I'm going to call you an expert, to me.
No, please.
Okay, well, one of our fantasy gurus is Guru better?
I prefer advisor.
Advisor. Okay. All right. So, and you can take that to the bank. He's an advisor. So if you have some questions about fantasy football, if you are a fantasy football virgin like me that are trying to get that interest peaked and stuff on there, leave the questions in here. We're watching the chat and stuff. I see Uno Muno. I see Joel. What's up, Joel? Stacy and RK and everybody else. Okay. So you are basically a free agent then, as far as your fandom, being that you are from Alaska and all that.
Technically, yes. I served 6.5 years.
He's an advisor, so
Sorry about that.
no problem.
No problem.
So, but
I served 6.5 years at the end of my military career down at Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Okay.
And actually carried the flag out for the Tennessee Titans game against Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
But the Titans hosted us. So, I have a little bit of a soft spot for them. I don't want to say that I'm a fan of theirs because I don't care if they win or lose, but it's nice to see them succeed because I've been there. I've seen them. I've met them. A little bit more personal experience versus just the TV.
Okay. Well, all right. Let's start digging into fantasy football. Okay. I don't know how much Stu has said about me. I still am. I'm old. Okay. I'm 55 years old. And for me, seeing players out on the field, swapping jerseys with other players and stuff and getting on in the off season, to me, football was war. We hated the other guys. We wanted to destroy them. And so I see fantasy football as this kinder, gentler football. And it's hard for me to get into this. I did have a fantasy football team last year that was run by somebody else. And I ended up having Miles Sanders on there and Zach Ertz. And it was just something in my brain that was just like, this is just wrong. I can't get over the fact that I have to root for anything from the Philadelphia Eagles. How do I get over that?
Well, let's just put it this way. Sometimes you have to separate the player from the team in your brain, or you won't get past it. Okay. I wrote a letter, first letter that I've ever had read live. Matthew Berry read it. It must have been a little over 10, 12 years ago now. I couldn't help myself because I had to get it out. And I knew I needed to say it. And I wrote a letter telling him just how amazing it was to be living through an era watching Brady play.
Okay.
Now, as a Dolphins fan, that makes me cry to think that I did that, and it's permanently on the airwaves. But the reality is, it's true. We've gotten to see. I got to see the entire era of the Marinos, the Elways, the Montanas, the Youngs, as far as quarterbacks, just not hypothetically, just specifically, separating that. But then we moved into an era, and we moved to that Roethlisberger, that Peyton Manning, that Tom Brady, that Drew Brees. That's one era. And now we're in a new one.
Yeah.
And to be honest, 10, 12 years ago, my letter still stands today. We just watched Brady win another Super Bowl, and I would love to just take them all away from him. But he wins you fantasy leagues and makes you win stuff.
Well, see, you're getting up in my area.
We call it Jobu wings.
Jobu wings. There you go.
I didn't want to say the wrong thing.
My man Angel says, Mark, you never get over it. It just gets easier. Okay. Sorry. It's
good.
like sleeping with the enemy, Angel. I'm sorry. It's just something that's so wrong about it. But I'm trying to work through it. I'm getting therapy. I'm trying to get some help with it, and I'm trying to understand. And that's why we're here, of course, on Saturdays. Okay, so I remember actually I used to work for Sam's Deli, and that was back in the late 80s, and I remember the first time I heard the whole term of fantasy football. I want to say it was about 1988 or 89. Does that sound about right?
It's a little bit far back for me to fully recall. A few concussions.
I just remember one of the customers that we had was always talking about fantasy football, and I was like, fantasy football? He said, you mean when the Washington Redskins get destroyed? That's my fantasy. But
they were even more hardcore back then. You had to write it. You had to get the newspaper, write your own stats down, turn your stat totals into the league manager so that he can compare what he had. It's a whole process. Now you just watch those
Stu, that's when people started doing it. Before that, we had to actually mail in with a stamp to the Sporting Noon your selections of who to drop and who to pick up.
Oh no!
And everything was salary because there was no way to track a waiver wire or bids or anything like that.
Well, Stuart, you got to understand the way news used to work. Okay, I grew up before there was an ESPN. Okay, George Michael's Sports Machine was actually the first nationally sports program that would come on Sunday nights at 11:30 to 12 o'clock, where you actually got highlights across the board. Other than that, you had to wait till like Friday for your Sports Illustrated to come in.
You only have 10 years on me. I'm 44 tomorrow.
Okay, well, actually I got 12.
Of course, my father was 44 all year, but I'll be 44 tomorrow.
Okay, so right now, fantasy football is definitely a lot easier than it would have been back in the day. Definitely. We can all agree on that one. Back to Tom Brady and things. It's kind of hard to compare different eras, and maybe this is what I need to start doing in my mind, because football back when I grew up is totally different than football nowadays. Because I don't think Tom Brady would be playing into his 40s had he played with the rules back with like Roger Staubach and things, where, literally the quarterback got fucked up on a weekly basis. Honestly, it's totally different now than back then. So maybe that's where I need to say it's not what I was doing when I was a kid and so on. It's a different sport.
That's actually a really good way to look at it because, like reading books about Larry Zonka, Jim Kick, Mercury Morris, Paul Warfield, guys like that, they were still tough guys way into their late years, even though they weren't playing football anymore. And if you put Dan Marino or even a Drew Bledsoe on that, in the era now,
oh my God,
they would survive all day because they handled the game well, and getting beat down that takes a toll on anyone,
Definitely. Well, that's where I met Drew Pearson, and I asked Drew Pearson if he had been playing today, how many more catches does he think he would have? And he said, about Huntsville? I said, Huntsville? He said, yeah, the prison. He said, I'd be locked up playing against these garbage-ass cornerbacks that are out here now and not being molested. See, that's what people don't seem to understand. And I always tell people, at least go back and look at some of the game films from back in the 70s and the 80s, and you see the collisions. Half of the hits that you saw back then literally would end up being flagged nowadays. It would be just like illegal. I mean, you think about Deacon Jones and the head slap and things, and before they actually counted statistics like sacks, and things. So it's totally different. And when you look at these numbers, a lot of our players today are deemed so much better than their predecessors because their numbers are so much higher. But you can't really compare the two because I'm not sure how many of those players could play in today's age because they're bigger and faster, and how many players today could have played with the violence of the other eras.
That's something that I actually take into consideration. It's kind of cool. Stu and I haven't talked about that, but that's something when I look at a player, that's something further I consider, because we can't predict injury.
Yeah.
Even though I do it every year.
Right.
We can't actually predict the injuries, but what you can do is you can examine the way they play, their physical makeup, and assess a risk to that. So that matters in the fantasy football side, because what they do in the real NFL translates to the game. If they don't play the game, we don't have the game, and
true.
You got to find some NASCAR or something or some.
Well, most definitely. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a crazy question, because this will relate to, and I'm glad, Corey, that you're on here, that you're a Dolphins fan as well as a Packer fan, because you'll get a different perspective than, of course, of us Cowboy fans all being around and all loving everything with the Dallas Cowboys like we always do this time of year. With fantasy football, and I guess it would be different leagues, turnovers. How do turnovers play as far as fantasy football-wise? On the defense.
You mean as far as how are they integrated into the game?
Takeaways as far as point scoring for fantasy football.
So most of your standard, scoring is set up by your ESPNs, NFL, CBS, and then on other platforms, or even within those platforms, people can change it on their own. So when you look at what's considered standard, just because it's already there, you're looking at -2 or -3 for an interception for the offensive quarterback.
Okay. And for the defense?
And a +2 points, +3 point gain for the defensive player that got it.
Okay, so here's my question. When you look at, say, the Dallas Cowboys defense, and I'm sure nobody's going to draft the Dallas Cowboys defense, right?
Oh, I did.
But here's my question, because this is what I'm looking back. See, I'm one of those ones that like to think that I'm a student of the game, and I look back in history at things that happened. In 2013, the Dallas Cowboys had, at that time, the worst defense that they ever had. They ended up giving up 436 points. They were 32nd in yardage giving up. They were 32nd in points. They were just bad. After that season, DeMarcus Ware went to Denver. Jason Hatcher, after having 11 sacks, went to Washington. Sean Lee tore up his knee. And that defense the next year jumped up to 15th in points, scoring defense, 19th in yardage, but was second at taking the football away. So is it more important for the takeaways versus the points that you're giving up?
Standard rules again, speaking.
Okay.
There are penalties for giving away too many points.
Okay.
So
Team
defense, mind you. And shout out to the Hustler. I've got one of his mugs that says to hell with team defense.
IDP.
We play individual defensive players, so I can scout different players instead of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But standard team defense leagues, once you get past 30 points, you start getting negatives for your scoring defense.
Okay.
But those takeaways are the prime way to have a top fantasy defense outside of touchdowns, which we know are unpredictable.
Okay, so here's my theory that the Dallas Cowboys are going to, and again, I'm a homer, okay, so I'm going to look at everything Dallas Cowboy-wise. that the Dallas Cowboys, with getting a guy like Micah Parsons, who they're looking at him as an edge rusher or actually kind of a demolition man, I could kind of say, where they're going to move him around all over the place. They're definitely going away from where they were more of the dazed and confused defense of Mike Nolan, and definitely getting away from the bend don't break of Rod Marnelli. They're going to be a very attacking team. They may end up giving up some big plays, but I think that they're going to get a lot more takeaways than what they've had in the past. And so from my standpoint, again, I'm the fantasy football virgin here. I'm thinking that the Cowboys will be one of the better taking the football away teams. They may give up a lot of points, although then again, looking at their schedule, there's not a lot of offensive juggernauts that they're playing. I mean, they've got Kansas City, of course, and they've got Tampa Bay, but you're playing Tampa Bay early with a new look defense. Who knows who's got the rust that's off of them on that one. Other than that, I don't see Washington being a very good offensive team. I don't see the Giants, the Eagles, and some of the other teams that they play. So would it be stupid to think about having the Dallas Cowboys as your defensive unit?
In a special type of league I'm in.
Special? Okay, are we talking about special or special?
Well, no, this...
You're playing Tampa Bay early with a new look.
This is kind of special in the sense that there are 32 teams in this league.
Mm-hmm.
So we each had to pick a team to represent. I'm the Dolphins, of course. You only get one defense because there's 32 of us. We each have to have one.
Right.
I selected Dallas.
Last year? Or this year?
Right now.
Oh, shit. Okay.
So the reason being is you have to look at not just the schedule, which you did. Great. Mm-hmm. You were throwing out stats a minute ago about scoring defense, number of takeaways, how high. Like, you're already doing the fantasy football. You're just not playing the game. I'm just saying. No,
come on, man. Stop. Okay. The flattery will get you nowhere.
So,
okay.
The main thing to look at is we're going to have fans back.
Yeah.
There was a slight shift in offensive capabilities and functionality last year, which means we're going to see a kind of a regression a little bit, which gives defenses a little bit better chance to compete.
Okay.
I'm with you. The young pieces they got, I like them. Do I think they're going to be a top-end defense, real NFL? I'm not actually that good at predicting. But fantasy, they have all the makings of tackle machine, keep the yardage down or at least controlled so I don't lose points, keep the scoring, even if I lose points, high enough that the other team's throwing some picks or fumbling the ball. We can always count on Daniel Jones for that. The opportunity is there for the fantasy side. And, Micah Parsons is a freak, but I'm more interested in Jabril Cox at this point.
All right.
On an individual player level. Not because of anything with Micah Parsons, Stu. Don't get beefed.
I'm good.
But we know Micah Parsons is a freak. So we know what he's going to do. We know he's going to be a wrecker. I'm curious to see if Jabril Cox steps up and becomes that younger, new piece that becomes a tackle monster, because that's what we need from him as far as fantasy stats.
Well, the biggest problem I see for the Cowboys is we have so many linebackers. Is how are we using them? Because you got Van Der Esch, you got Jalen Smith, you got Jabril Cox, you got Micah Parsons, you got Keanu O'Neal, who's also in there too. I'm almost thinking, and this is just my speculation, and I actually did a video earlier today about this, is maybe that Micah Parsons might end up being one kind of like a rover, but also an outside linebacker, where they're using him kind of as a Charles Haley pass rusher. Now, he's a little bit light in the ass on that right now at 245, but with his speed and his capability and having experience there, you've got Randy Gregory and DeMarcus Lawrence that are now going to have to be stand-up linebackers when they're in their 3-4 base defense. So it's not that big a reach. So if you can put a playmaker out there and then put in Jabril Cox to say for Jalen Smith and things, another playmaker. There's so many different combinations, but you almost have a log jam with linebackers right now for the Cowboys.
And that's something we have to consider when we're looking at individual player defense games. So, I don't want to get too deep into individual defensive players, but I will tell you that there was a video this guy did. Mm-hmm. It's a few days old now, but I mean, you could probably find it. He was in the hospital about to get a meniscus surgery done. Did an awesome breakdown of linebackers.
Jackass. Okay.
And I mean, he really laid it out, because as a defensive mind, like I also coached the Pee-wees down in Fort Campbell. So like I love the defense.
Okay.
And you did an awesome breakdown. Well, he did an awesome breakdown in his video. I don't
Must
know
have been the drugs. Must have been the drugs they had him on.
But it is a different style of football now. We have those edge rushers, and we have tweeners who play linebacker safety tweens.
Right.
And it's something that we have to consider. So then we have to look at snap share, and that's why I don't want to get too deep into the individual defensive players.
Okay.
Because it gets into rotations, and it gets into how they're used, and that relates to the league.
Gotcha.
So team defense, the benefit of that is you get them all.
So are you better off going for, say, like a Baltimore Ravens type of a defense? Baltimore is always really typically a really good defense. Not always, but for the most part, you're usually looking at them doing well.
I will tell you that the number one scoring defense, somebody's going to need to fact check this, but I cannot remember the last time they repeated as the number one scoring defense in fantasy.
Interesting. Okay.
So New England, one year they actually were outscoring everybody on the field with just their team defense. The next year, everybody who drafted them early, they kind of stepped on themselves.
All right, let me get to some of these, some of our fans in here. Robbie Harris, thank you for becoming a Jobu Mojo crew member. Cowboys for Life says, yes, Dak Prescott is a great fantasy quarterback. Watch for the van to be thrown at the line. I need to get my boy, I left my glasses inside. Dak is a top 4 or 5 fantasy. He was number 1 in points per game last year, according to Fantasy Pros and his quarterback. Okay, so typically you got 10 teams in a fantasy league, right?
10 to 12.
10 to 12.
That's 10 is the easy starter way. 12 is when you start to get a little more competitive.
Okay.
So your free leagues will be 10 to 12. Your money leagues will generally not be less than 12.
All right. What is your philosophy? What are you looking for first to get on your team?
I'm going to answer your question with a question.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
If Dak is gone, you have no choice. You need a quarterback. Your team is done because you have no quarterback. Who are you taking? If you had the choice of anybody but Dak, he was the only quarterback gone, and your pick is next. Who do you think we should? Why would we take another quarterback at all?
Well,
would you play the whole year without one?
I wouldn't imagine you play a season without a quarterback. And I mean, well, the Eagles kind of did last year, but that's a different story. Okay. No, you'd have to take another quarterback.
So who would you take?
Fuck. Well, you got to look at a team that's going to score a lot of points. You got to think of, I mean, Aaron Rodgers may not be playing, so you wouldn't necessarily take him. Deshaun Watson will probably get a lot of garbage time because the Texans will be ass and they'll be chasing people, and so they'll be behind a whole lot. And, I mean, you think of teams that are really good teams that are going to be blowing people away. I mean, of course, you want to think about Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes would be scoring a lot of points. But sometimes you have a team that's really good that they're on cruise control and they're not doing much in the second half. So I guess I would take Pat Mahomes.
Right now, Pat Mahomes is the 101 in almost all Superflex leagues where a quarterback goes first.
Okay.
So what you just did is you just broke down a fantasy draft and took the best quarterback after somebody took Dak.
Okay. Is that wrong?
Uh-oh.
Okay. You froze up. Okay.
Sorry, I had a hiccup in the video for a second there.
Okay, so I took a quarterback. Would that have been a wrong thing to have done?
Well, let Ross touch on the difference between super flex and single quarterback and the different strategies, what you would normally do early in a single versus.
Well, actually, let me say this much, okay? Because I was doing the ESPN draft, and Sal was trying to tell me what to do. I got all confused because I'm old, and we had vacuum tube computers back when I grew up. I wanted to get Dak from Jump Street, and it was like, no, you want to get your quarterback first. And I was I was just like, I just want to have Dak. I just wanted to have that guy, and I messed around, and we ended up with Matty Ice. Not that Matty Ice had a terrible season, because they were always behind. They were always scoring a lot of points. They just couldn't hold on to leagues. But I ended up with Miles Sanders. I had Matty Ice. I know I had Zach Ertz, and I can't remember who the receiver. Oh, I even had Adrian Peterson. Jesus Christ. So, I know I had an ass team. But you typically go for running backs in the first round, though, right? Because the running backs are going to get more points than, say, the quarterback?
So in a regular league, which we call one quarterback now because so many people want to do this two quarterback super flex thing.
Okay.
In a one quarterback league or traditional league, your quarterbacks aren't as valuable. There's so many of them.
Okay. And
you only need to start one every week. So yes, you wait a long while to get one just because their scoring value separating each other is a smaller tier than the difference between the top 12 running backs and the next 12. So by the end of the second round, a lot of running backs are going to be gone. Those first and second round, a lot of running backs go just because they're going to outscore their peers and give you that differential.
Okay, so Troy Daniels said he put Dak against Tom Brady any day in fantasy. Robbie says Dak's going to be very valuable in fantasy football this year, top 5. What's up, Jessica? How are you doing? Dak is a great quarterback in real life. Russell Wilson, Robbie says. And Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people want to have Patrick Mahomes. Okay, so let's say you can't get Dak. You can't get Pat Mahomes. You can't get Russell Wilson. Who else would be a good fantasy quarterback to get? Are you looking at one of the young guys like Justin Herbert, or do we think that Justin Herbert may have that sophomore slump? Do we look at Josh Allen and say that Josh Allen, he got a weapon last year. They had a great season last year, but I say that the New England Patriots are going to be coming back with a vengeance.
And you can write any narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I can agree with everything you just said and tell you why, but at the same time, I can disagree and tell you why.
Okay. In other words, it's like regular football. Okay.
Right. The question is, what are the highest probabilities? And in football, fantasy football, you get points for rushing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't get one of these top guys, then you might want to look at a quarterback that might have to run for his life, Jalen Hurts. And
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson. Except the difference is Deshaun Watson can launch the ball like nothing.
Okay.
Billy played this year though.
So then the balance. Still, we didn't want to get into that.
I know.
That's I didn't want to make a statement that said, "Hey, the dude is, having a good time. Let him have a good time. Maybe he ain't worried."
I wasn't even going to go that far. I was just saying in the context of drafting, don't want anybody out there drafting Watson thinking he might be available when he might not be.
Okay. All right. Robbie Harris says Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence. Now, the nice thing with Trevor Lawrence is we know what he's capable of. And his profile put him ahead of Burrow, ahead of Fields, ahead of pretty much everybody but Andrew Luck, when he came out.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on a second now. Andrew Luck had to retire early because he got tired of getting his ass whooped behind a bad offensive line.
Yep.
I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is going to do the same thing because, there's quarterbacks play differently. Andrew Luck was a baller and, was a little more aggressive as far as running the ball and things like that. Lawrence can run the ball, but he's not, one of those guys that does that first.
Yeah.
So he could throw a lot. I will tell you that historically, statistically speaking, rookie quarterbacks don't average a high-end game.
Okay.
Cam Newton blew the game out of the water as a rookie. How many Cam Newtons have we had since then? Not
Dak Prescott. Didn't Dak take it out the water too? No.
Well, I mean, if we're talking Cowboys, I guess we could add him in, but
hang on for 1 second here. Jason Garrett.
Situation requires is a whole lot more, and you shut your mother ass up.
There you go, Jason Garrett. That's my response to you, jackass. Okay, so
what did he say? It wasn't a catch?
Oh, no, he was talking about the way I said Justin Herbert, okay? Herbert. We know I'm a name butcher, okay?
I let it go.
If you're here for me to pronunciate everything correctly, then you might as well take your motherfucking ass out. So Troy Daniels asks, which would you take first, a tight end or a wide receiver? And would that be depending on which tight end it would be? I mean, if you're looking at, say, Kelsick, is that different than if you're talking about an average wide receiver?
I brought this board.
Uh-oh.
This just for you.
Okay.
Team number 9 was me, and you can't see the sticker from there.
Okay.
But my first pick in a 10-team league, and yes, I won the title that year, was Travis Kelce. Now, I followed that up with Tyreek Hill. So your question, tight end or wide receiver, the question becomes,
which one
how good is that tight end?
Mm-hmm.
There's only a few in the league, but the question also is, does your league give extra points? Because a lot of them now are starting to give extra points for tight ends to allow them to offset their lack of involvement like a wide receiver.
Interesting. Okay.
So, yes, I would not care about taking a tight end over a wide receiver if that tight end were Kelce, Waller, Kittle. In a dynasty, you could take Pitts. I'm not a big fan of taking Pitts in the first couple rounds of a regular redraft type league because I can't keep him the following year. And unless he is historically the best, then historically he's going to be a wasted pick for me.
Okay. It's funny, but with the evolution of tight ends, I dare say in real football world that a great tight end is actually more important than a great wide receiver. In fact, when you look back in the recent history of Super Bowls, almost every single Super Bowl winning team has had actually a great tight end, sometimes a better tight end than wide receivers. And the way that has evolved, that's one of those things where I look at the Cowboys and I wonder, between Dalton Schultz and Blake Jarwin, are we good enough to compete actually at tight end? And are either of those two guys good for fantasy football?
If one of them becomes a primary, there's a difference between an H-back and a Y tight end.
Okay.
Your inline tight end versus your blocking. So one of the benefits of George Kittle is he's a great blocker. Travis Kelce, same thing. But then you have Darren Waller, who is just a target monster. So he's getting thrown the ball all the time, regardless of the situation. So you look at a Dalton Schultz and a Blake Jarwin, and you ask yourself, which one could be an inline receiving tight end that doesn't need to be blocking? Are they running a 12 personnel, 21 personnel, 22, whatever personnel package they're running? Does he need to block? Because if he needs to block, then he's not out there trying to score points. There are 0 points for blocking, and that's shout out to offensive linemen. Unfortunately, you can't pancake anybody and get points for my team.
Yeah. Now here's what could be interesting though, because the Cowboys, when you look at Dalton Schultz and Blake Jarwin, half the time I'll say one and I'm meaning the other because they're almost like twins. They are very similar as far as their abilities and so forth. And with that, I think actually both of them are not bad at catching the football, but of course, because of the way the offense is, we need that blocker. But if this offense decides we're going to get creative and start being more deceptive, with Jason Garrett, of course, we pretty much, everybody knew what you're going to do by down and distance in the package you had out there. You could technically go into a 2 tight end set, single back, look like it's a running play, and having both of them going out in routes. In which case now, teams are going to put 8 guys in the box, and you got your 2 wideouts out wide. They're running deep. You're doing crossing patterns across the middle, and you could feast on it. So if the Cowboys decide to be a deceptive offense, it could be conceivable that they could both end up having quite a few catches between the two of them. I mean, I'm looking maybe 40 each, possibly, or somewhere around 80 catches total for the tight ends between the both of them. Is that crazy?
80 catches or 80 targets?
80 targets between the two of them. I mean, Jason would usually would get about 65 catches a season.
But right, so
between the two of them, I'm looking about 80 receptions between the two. They may lean on one more than the other. One may end up going back, into being more of the blocking back and so forth. But the Cowboys typically have been averaging about 60, 65 catches per their lead tight end for the last few years.
So it's kind of a 2-part answer on that. And Stu, jump in if I slip up here. So the first thing to always, without fail, write down, don't ever forget, make a sticky note. Okay. When you buy a pass catcher, tight end or wide receiver, you are buying the quarterback, even if you don't have him on your fantasy team.
Great point.
If I don't trust Mitchell Trubisky, then I am not drafting Cole Kmet or Jimmy Graham.
Great point. I didn't think of it that way.
So conversely, when you're buying a quarterback, you have to think about the pass catchers. And in this case, I wouldn't draft Blake Jarwin or Dalton Schultz. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to be good for fantasy.
Okay.
There's a thing called Living the Stream as an actual podcast, but the streaming idea is that I draft Blake Jarwin. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's got a couple good matchups coming up. And then when he's done, I've already picked up my next tight end, and I'm going to drop Jarwin and play the other guy. And I'm going to drop that guy. I'm going to pick up another guy. And they're all going to be, mediocre or bottom-level tight ends. But collectively, by playing the right one every week, you can get average scoring through the year, and it's not a detriment to your team. Now, that takes a lot of work, and you got to know what you're doing, because if you can't scout defensive packages,
right,
you're not going to know whether that tight end's even going to have a good opportunity week. Like Arizona, one year, the number one tight end, I want to say 75% of that year was against Arizona.
Okay.
So that year, all you had to do was have the tight end playing Arizona,
Okay. So then Stu and Corey, let's say you're somebody like me. I'm busy all the time. I mean, all the time. I'm either doing videos, I'm in the workshop, I'm building houses, I'm doing the honey-do list, trying to stay out of the doghouse, and we all understand trying to stay out of the doghouse. And you don't have enough time to try and go through, because technically, I mean, it's really analyzing a whole lot of data and statistics and everything else. If you're really getting knee-deep in fantasy football, you've really got to know something about everybody. You got to know the team that each team and so forth is playing, right?
No.
How do you do that? Well, I mean, you got to know if the team, if somebody's going to be more favored to have a great game because they're playing a terrible, passing defense, versus a great run-stopping defense. There's going to be some games where you look at and say, that they can't, let's say Zeke is going to be running against the Washington football defensive run. You don't want to start Zeke Elliott that weekend, right?
Wrong.
Question, do you, though?
I don't know,
because
I'm asking the question.
If I trust Zeke's talent and volume, the amount of times he's going to touch the ball, to outweigh the defense he's against, then I might play him anyways. And yes, there's a risk to that, but let's be honest. You can take down the number one rushing defense if you scheme out properly.
In context,
now, obviously, the Rams showed us that you don't always scheme out properly, but go ahead, Stu.
Okay.
With a guy like Zeke, you don't want to bench Zeke. I mean, you drafted him for being Zeke.
To be the workhorse.
And context matters. If you have a strong running back core and you've got two other top 12 running backs on your roster and you want to bench Zeke against a Washington front, I suppose you could. But you'd be hard-pressed to bench a guy like Zeke. As far as not studying all the data, beyond going to like content creators like Fantasy Football Hustler and Smitty with Fantasy Football Show, Adam Rank, James Coe, Marcus Grant, guys like that. A lot of the formats, ESPN, I know is good about it, and that's probably who we'll use for the Jobu leagues that we're going to start running through Discord. Like when you have a player next to it in the defense that they're playing, the defense will be ranked as in how good good or bad that defense is. So you can do a quick check real quick, and when you're adding players, you can go through, like if you're doing what Roz was talking about and you're streaming tight ends off the waiver wire, you can hit that waiver wire, see who's available that coming week, and you can look at the matchups. They're already plugged in. The numbers are plugged in.
It's a green number or a red number. Green is good, red is bad.
Okay, Troy Daniels is definitely getting a lot of information out here tonight. He wants to know, do tight ends have more points to earn than wide receivers?
Tight ends, say it again.
I think he's trying to ask if tight ends score more than wide receivers, and it would depend on I think he was the same person asking if you would draft tight end or wide receiver first, and that would depend on scoring format. If you've got a tight end premium format where you're getting an extra 0.25, extra half point, or even an extra point per reception just for tight ends, then you look at a guy like Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, and you can arguably take those guys over a wide receiver when you're coming to that first pick. Sometimes Kelsey goes in the first round of dynasty leagues or superflex, second round. But for the most part,
Stu, this is actually it's a long running battle amongst the fantasy industry and community.
The comfort of one of those guys or the struggle of streaming.
Right. So if I took last year, or not last year, this was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I took Kelsey in the first round. I did that because in that 10-team league, Kelsey may not outscore Tyreek Hill, who I took next, but he's going to outscore every tight end that comes later, and I'll have an advantage over the rest of the league.
Gotcha, strategy.
So then that's the argument that's in the industry is do you want that safety, like Stu said? Do you want to be able to start Kelsey every week, never worry about your tight end ever again until he's gone?
Interesting point.
You know, do you want to pass on a wide receiver that is 9 times out of 10 going to outscore all but the top 2 or 3 tight ends? And again, that's based on the assumption that year after year, the wide receivers are outscoring the tight ends, which they generally do, but sometimes you can have in the top 12 pass catchers, 3 of them, 5 of them might even be tight ends if it's a tight end centric year where receivers just aren't catching passes.
Okay. Now, the
NFL does ebb and wane, you know?
Hawk, who is a Eagles fan, would ask, this is actually not a fantasy question, but he said, would I do a swap of CeeDee Lamb for Devontae Smith in a straight trade if I had the power? No. Would you?
If I was the Cowboys?
Fuck no. Sorry.
I wouldn't want to lose CeeDee on my team, but taking Devontae Smith is not as dramatic a loss because his, you know, look, it's hard to say because it's not a direct player comparison in my book. Devontae's got kind of a little bit of a different. He's got a few different hurdles to pass as far as being more unique in the NFL, whereas CeeDee Lamb is more of your prototypical, guaranteed, I can count on him type of player as long as he don't become a diva or Terrell Owens or something else, you know.
Well, that's a move. If you try to peel off the fan part, take the jerseys away, CD versus Devontae Smith. Give me CD. And yeah, I'm a Cowboys fan, so doubly give me CD. But that was an Eagles fan asking the question, so that's the type of move where Alex was trying to get me to overpay to get Dak. As a Cowboys fan, if I was an Eagles fan, okay, I could see myself trading CeeDee Lamb to get Devontae Smith because that's my guy. Whoever gets CeeDee Lamb's winning that trade, but I could see myself doing that if I was an Eagles fan.
Interesting stat about Dak and CD, that in passes over 20 yards, Dak Prescott had a perfect passer rating to CeeDee Lamb.
You're going to go nuts.
Are you sure you want to use that stat?
Okay, I'm just saying. But
the only reason I bring that
go ahead.
Whether or not you want
go ahead
and
tell me why I'm an idiot.
No. I'm just saying you got to be careful about split stats because Daniel Jones is one of the top end 20+ yard passy people-y stuff.
Point noted. Mr. Danny, I trip over my own toes. Jones.
Exactly.
Danny, I played for 13 games and had 11 touchdown passes. Danny, I've had more fumbles than games, the only quarterback in history to ever do that currently. Okay, so there's that. Okay,
Daniel, who, according to Receive on draft day?
Oh yeah, what? Why do we draft a wide receiver? Okay, all right. So let's get to some more of these crazy questions in here. If I can see some of them, I don't know why I forgot my glasses.
You want to give some people some advice here, huh?
Well, this is what this is about: is trying to help others become better fantasy football players. I
usually just answer Stu's questions.
Okay.
Hey. And I appreciate bouncing info off of you. That's one of the things about fantasy, too. I say people process their information differently. And I like to do two things. I like when I make a friend with somebody that's another fan base, knowing there's going to be a certain amount of bias in there, I like to talk to them and get their feel of their team, their players, and try to separate some of the bias and apply what feels legit. Roz doesn't do that as much. He's more statistical driven, but I like getting info from anywhere that I can. And with having somebody that you can bounce information off of that sees it differently than you see it the same, but you got there a different way, to be able to expand on your knowledge and kind of the overall experience of playing fantasy football, getting to know other people in the community, getting to learn more about the NFL, getting some things I don't even think about, and Roz will say, and some things Roz will be like, oh shit, I never thought about it.
The midi pack.
So I love the community aspect and just picking people's brains on it and having fun, and at the end of the day, trying to see if I'm better than the other 10 or 11 guys that are in the league with me.
Jason Garrett, who of course is always in here trolling, wants to know where I got my Dak hat from. I got it from Miss Jackie and Miss Anita, who actually got it from Dak's shop. So, if you want to shop there, Jason Garrett, go right ahead. We'll let the Giants fans know that you are still a diehard Dallas Cowboy fan at heart, okay? Giants will have a new quarterback in 2022. Bank on it. Danny is ass. Football players today are pussies compared to the 70s and 80s. You'll get no argument on there. You're supposed to believe in your team, Jessica, and your offense is going to be really, really good. But your defense, like I stated earlier, will finish between 29th and 31st. See, this is so funny to me, where people think that a defense or an offense that finished, where they finished last year is what they're going to do the next year. People seem to forget how there's so much turnover in football. Like I was pointing out about the 2013 to 2014 defense. There's no way in the world, when you think of losing DeMarcus Ware and Sean Lee and Jason Hatcher, that defense would, drop almost 100 points less the next year. But that's what happens. And people who are picking the New York Giants, this drives me crazy. They turn around and they say that the New York Giants are the second best team in the division, but their offense was 31st. So are you expecting that offense and Daniel Jones to really improve that much to be that good of a team? Because if it weren't for the Dallas Cowboys and the Eagles last year being completely ass, we wouldn't have talked about the Giants or Washington at 7-9 and 6-10. They're only getting love because the division was so bad. Am I wrong in that? You know, it drives me crazy because I keep hearing everybody talk about how great Washington was, but Washington was playing a pretty weak schedule last year. They didn't exactly play the cream of the crops. Am I wrong?
This is what I love, is I love hearing people answer their own questions. And you just did. You discussed how weak the division was, then you also discussed the schedule. And all of these things play into when we consider a player. If I'm looking at Dak, I'm looking at last year, and I don't care what pace he was on. I got to look at the schedule, and I got to look at, would they have held that pace through the whole year, which probably not. The defense kind of gelled a little bit towards the end.
Did they
so
gel?
He might have eased off.
Did they gel, or did they also play some bad teams? I mean, they're playing Josh Rosen from the 49ers. They're playing Daniel Jones. I mean,
hey, if I can beat Josh Rosen down, I'm doing a good job. So I'll count that as gelling. No, I'm still bitter. Look, I got a Josh Rosen Dolphins sweatshirt. I'm bitter. Okay. I will always be bitter.
Hey, at least you weren't the Cardinals that ended up drafting to begin with.
No, but instead we passed on Tristan Wirfs.
True.
Who was in the Super Bowl protecting Tom Brady because we needed Tua fish. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not arguing about the quarterback, because I personally believe that he is a solid to great NFL quarterback eventually. Okay. But what I am arguing is did we need him then, when we turn around and could have had Justin Fields or someone else this year and already had the offensive line in place after you traded away Jeremy Tunsil? Anyways, look, you got me going fan. All right, look.
It looks like we struck a nerve there.
But
don't kick the dog.
When you go back and ask, I'm not going to lie. As far as fantasy football, I have actually traded to get Daniel Jones. Now, not everywhere, and understand, I'm in 32 different leagues, so diversifying your portfolio is important.
Okay. Daniel Jones. Okay. Troy Daniels asked, typically how many rounds are there in a fantasy draft?
You're going to run an average of 20, and that gives you your starting lineup and your bench. Those are going to be the smallest leagues you're going to be in.
Okay.
And some of your high stakes will actually use that short format. But you're going to look at least 20, unless you have a very large league, and then you'll have a shorter draft because obviously there's less players available. But your average one is going to be about 20 to 30 players to start.
Okay. Well, Corey, let's go actually back to real football for a second here, since you are a Packer fan. What are your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers? Do you think he's going to play this year?
I think Aaron Rodgers just got a Christmas gift in July. What do they say, Christmas in July?
Yeah.
Because you can opt out this year.
$18 million.
You can opt out with no penalty. Don't lose your money. Nothing else. COVID rules came back. He's not at risk, so he won't get paid, but he also won't get penalized.
Wow. I didn't hear about that.
If I'm not mistaken, he'll still get $18 million if he opts out. And just hang out on the beaches in Hawaii for $18 million and come back next year.
Or do Jeopardy. Man. Okay.
Yeah, so he just got a Christmas gift. Personally, I expected him to come back, whether he played or not, or just started hell. I couldn't tell you. I don't know the guy, and to be honest, it's the fan in me, just like Favre. Favre drove me nuts at the back end of his career, but
Diva.
the reality is they gave us how many good years. I can't hate a guy, no matter it's the business side of things that we don't like.
Yeah.
But I can't hate him for what he did for us for how many years. And I it's easier to stay away from it. Just avoid it altogether, even with fantasy football. Now, mind you, on that note, 32 leagues, I have 16 shares of A.J. Dillon. Okay. So if that tells you where I think that team is going, He is my highest owned player. I had to make sure I had over 50% ownership.
Okay.
I've actually traded him and I'm sorry. I just drafted my 17th chair today. I totally forgot all about that.
So how many leagues do you guys actually play in?
Well, now only one of those is actually a redraft. So the rest are dynasties, which means I manage those rosters year round. But a lot of them are leagues that go dormant. So after the season or maybe after the playoffs, people just disappear. They stop checking in. They don't answer trades. They don't talk. Nothing. So it's not difficult to manage. Some of those have college players. So it matters to me what's happening during the college season as well as high school recruiting, who is coming out in the draft, things like that. So, I mean, I run all kinds of formats. You pick a format. The only one I'm not in is called Campus to Canton.
Campus to Canton. Okay.
Campus to Canton, you draft a full college lineup and a full NFL lineup, and you compete for 2 titles every year with the same league.
Oh.
So you could win one or both titles, and you own those players till you get rid of them.
So when they come out of
college roster moves on to the NFL roster.
Wow.
I have what's called Devy. Devy means that I have a practice squad or taxi squad, and anywhere up to 10 or 12 guys can sit on it until they finish their college career. I can trade those guys. I can keep them. I can drop them. And then every year you have a separate rookie draft and a Devy draft. So you can draft more college guys.
That's really getting deep. That you got to have a lot of time on your hands to be able to do that.
No, I actually, I'll be honest. I suck at college football scouting.
Okay,
but I understand enough about statistics, profiles in the game that I've actually started watching it more. So now I'm starting to actually see these cats play. Before I was so engrossed in NFL that I just didn't have the time to sit and watch it. And there are a lot of good resources out there. And let's be honest, Joe Burrow last year, Joe Burrow was available in every depleted rookie draft because the Devy guys missed on him.
Okay.
So everybody makes mistakes.
Troy, I hope you join our Discord because you'll be able to ask a lot of these questions. So if you were getting into fantasy leagues, should I wait to see who opts out because of the COVID thing before drafting?
So you're going to for redraft leagues, you're going to want to wait as close to the season as you can before you do your drafts. That way you can account for injuries, trades, opt-outs, things like the unknowns right now while we're sitting here at dead time, twiddling our thumbs trying to figure out what to talk about because there's nothing going on. You want to wait as close to the season as possible. Dynasty leagues, that's like Roz says, that's a year-round process. Dynasty league drafts start around a month after the season's over, and you're managing that team like a GM all year. So it just depends. Can we do something real quick? Sure. I kind of like the idea of having the outside opinion come on and talk NFC East, but with Roz, kind of like us, we're NFC East, but we know the NFC because Cowboys. Roz is mostly Miami fan. He's a Packers. His family's from Green Bay, and so they're owners. But I want to get his perspective on the NFC East as it pertains to fantasy football, like we did with Bogart and Alex last week, and then just as a little bit of something different, touch on the AFC, his division with Miami, and give some of us some insight as to fantasy as it pertains to AFC East.
Okay.
You serious? Like you seriously just put me on that?
I've been passing the Dutchie from the left-hand side. It's my birthday tomorrow, and
happy
early birthday. I'm only doing this because it's going to be your birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Troy Daniels, definitely
me and Mark can talk Cowboys all day. Everybody knows what's going to come out of our mouth. We love Dak. We love CD. We love Amari. We love Gallup, and I'll sell you on Jarwin when we get off of this. I think he's going to be really nice if he can stay healthy. But you're not a Cowboys fan. So for all the people in the chat that are chirping, the Philly fans, all the people that hate us.
That's everybody.
You tell us about us and the other teams in the NFC East.
Well, actually, let me add to that too. So if we're going to get cussed out by a Packer/Dolphin fan, let's go ahead and get trashed out. Do the Cowboys are they really as good as some people are saying, or are they just ass? Are they overrated as always?
They're not overrated.
Okay.
They're going to go to the Super Bowl.
They're buying
if they
tickets?
buy tickets like everybody else.
I knew that was coming. I knew it was coming.
No, they're not overrated. But you know how football works. You played.
Oh, yeah.
Any given Sunday, it doesn't matter how good you are. Somebody can make a mistake or somebody can get lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy football is the exact same. So let me just, to put that in perspective, last year, Alvin Kamara, during Super Bowl games for fantasy, scored 6 touchdowns. Okay?
Killed me.
Unless you were me, in one league, only one league last year that I played Alvin Kamara, I had Josh Allen and won. Otherwise, you were losing because Alvin Kamara just scored 6 touchdowns all over you.
I knocked my brother-in-law out of the first round bye. He came back through the bracket. We played in the championship. He had Allen and Kamara sitting over here at my house on Christmas Day just laughing at me.
Troy, I hope you're a part of our Discord channel, okay? Stu, if you could slap the link on there. He wants to know which leagues are best for beginners to start with. Like the
I would either go with an Yahoo? NFL, CBS Sports, or an ESPN.
Or the Jobu Sports Report. Aren't we having a league here, Stu?
We're going to have
I didn't know if we were having free, open, public leagues.
Okay. I don't know. Stu, I defer to you on that one. Stu?
We'll talk about that through the week this week and get that all set up. But we'll have at least leagues for the members. I would expect probably we'll open it up to just any district.
Troy is a channel member, so he would definitely be one of them.
And the channel members are going to have access to the Discord area where Roz and myself, Alex, the Fantasy Football Hustler, and other guys by the time the season gets here can help answer questions, whether it's dynasty, redraft, or whatever. And we'll have some leagues going, either be going on ESPN or Sleeper formats. But I'm about to post the Discord link in there right now. Anybody that's a member just has to let me know and either send me a screenshot of their membership or somebody like Troy, who you're already saying is a member.
Yeah.
I can have that Jobu rolling. They can have access to those rooms. The regular Discord chat, anybody can join in there. And I would venture somebody like an Eastside Herald is going to wind up playing in one of these leagues with us, but he won't have access to the membership room unless he becomes a member.
Okay. All right. That sounds like a winner. So, Troy, did that answer your question there? Aaron Rodgers 1-4 in NFC Championship games. Okay. But,
so let's say that I was going to hypothetically break down the NFC East.
The
first thing is, what does the landscape of the NFC look like? Because they're going to have to jockey amongst each other, but they are looking at the other teams. No matter what anybody says, they're all looking at other teams too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dak, if you want to go position by position, we would say Dak. I would then probably go Jalen Hurts, Fitzpatrick, and the guy with the dimes.
Danny Dollar Store.
As far as real quarterbacks, and then as far as fantasy, I would go the same ranking.
Okay.
So in that case, they're the same to me, and that's based on several factors, which is the team they're playing on, the scheme they're playing in, the schedule.
Okay.
Then when you want to talk running backs, everybody's on the Antonio Gibson train, but
I like Gibby.
Gibson's good. but he also didn't play the same after getting hurt, and the coaching staff doesn't want to lose him.
Mm-hmm. They may be more conservative.
They may ease back on the way they used him. Zeke is going to be Zeke. I think anybody that took themselves in the whole Zeke is falling off train last year might have just overemphasized what they thought he was going to do. Mm-hmm. Especially after Dak went down, and then
the offensive line was terrible. I mean, let's be clear here. You know, when you get to your 5th and 6th tackle, come on, and you've lost your quarterback. I'm amazed that people look and say, "Oh, well, he should have been a 1,500-yard back." Sorry, our offensive line for some stretches last year where it was ranked around 29th as far as like pass coverage, and I think 25th at running the football. We weren't exactly opening up holes. Now, I'm not saying that he hasn't lost a step, because typically a running back after their 4th year is kind of the peak, and they start to go down unless you're Adrian Peterson. But what?
We like to call that lazy analysis.
Okay.
No, that's okay. You can say that, but not to your members. Okay.
Okay. All right.
You can say that. You can say second contract running backs, just get rid of them. Oh. But then when your members come in, I'm going to explain to them how to look at second contract running backs and find the ones you can buy cheap that people are getting rid of because they thought that the second contract was crap.
You know, again, I'm a homer, but I'm going to look at Zeke Elliott versus, say, some of the
Miley Cyrus.
Well, no. Zeke has not had major injuries. Zeke is, you know, other than his own personal tragedies that he's had that have hurt him. But when you look at, say, Barkley, because I'd be more concerned about having Barkley, who's come off of 2 major injuries in his first couple of years in football, versus Zeke Elliott. Zeke Elliott's not blown an ACL and things like that. He's gotten a lot of carries and things like that. But you do see him at least do a lot of work as far as his body goes. And that's where I look and say, you know, he's not going to be the guy he was as a rookie, but I still see him as a very productive back, you know, for years forward, especially if the Cowboys figure out that we can't just use him as a battering ram, get him the ball in space, much like Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley, when he got to his second contract, he was already having an arthritic knee and having other issues where he was breaking down. But, you know, then again, I'm a guy with a day job and a voodoo doll. I don't know crap.
Ooh, I love this guy. Like, he's smart. All right? He's smart in the head, you know? He's got this view. Now, what we call that in fantasy football is ceiling versus floor. Mm-hmm. So what you just told me is, if you're risk averse, you're going to choose Zeke because he's going to give you guaranteed points every week, but he may never hit that high.
Well, but the other reason why I would say take Zeke is because you're not looking at just Zeke. You're looking at what comes back around him. If you believe that Tyron Smith, after having the neck surgery and everything else, is healed and will be able to play 13 games, if Lyle Collins coming back from the hip surgery and things, that if those guys are playing and the offensive line is together along with Dak Prescott, then you're going to be able to score a whole lot of points in the first half and be able to be cruise control second half, in which case you'd probably run the football more. And that's the way I would kind of look at it. So it's more than just saying, oh, I got Zeke. Well, Zeke is predicated on what everything else that happens around him. You can't just look at a guy and say, oh, well, Julio Jones is great. Now he's going to another team and he's going to be. It may not be the same situation, because sometimes a player is great because of what's around them, not so much as the player. And I'll say Alvin Harper. Alvin Harper, when he was with the Cowboys, you know, you looked at him and said he's a stud. But when he had to go to Tampa Bay or Washington and end up being the guy without having, you know, a Michael Irvin on the other side, without having a, all-pro quarterback throwing to him, he was ass. So you kind of have to look at the situation of the team around him. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right.
Oh, okay. I see Rashid's up in here. What's up, Rashid? How you doing today, man?
What? Why did we get a wide receiver? Why did we get a wide receiver?
Why did we draft Kadarius Toney?
Why did we get a wide receiver?
Oh shit, he is a dog.
How you doing today, Rashid?
That's a good pick, though.
Okay, so for the Giants, and since I got my man Rashid in here, I know he plays fantasy football. With the Giants picking up Galladay and all these wide receivers and stuff, are these guys, as you were talking about before, you got to look at the quarterback that's throwing. Are they good fantasy picks with Danny Dimes throwing to them?
I believe what we're going to see is a little bit better balance of passing. Doesn't mean necessarily that Kenny Galladay is going to be a wide receiver one, a top 12 type of guy in fantasy football. Top 12 is a wide receiver one. But Galladay will balance out what Shepard and Slayton do. Tony will fit in and be a little bit more. I hate using the word gadget because he's not a gadget guy. He can play, but he doesn't have a specific role the way Sterling Shepard and Slayton do.
Okay.
Now, when you had Evan Ingram, Slayton, and Shepard all healthy. No, wait, I don't ever remember that happening. So when you have Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, and Darius Slayton, and Kenny Galladay all healthy for game one, I think you're going to see what we're going to see.
Okay.
All right. So if Kenny Galladay if Danny Dimes zeroes in on him, I think you can call that real because they have the right setup, the right type of different players.
Okay.
The question is, where is he going to put the ball? Because he hasn't had a true balance before. Like he hasn't really had.
Gotcha.
I mean, Shepard and Slayton, I love them because they're floor plays in fantasy. You can always use them. They're just not really going to score super points. But they don't really give you balance. You got one guy crossing, you got one guy going deep or vice versa. And where is the other guy out there? Two guys going deep, open up underneath for the wide receiver, for the tight end or for a back coming on a wheel route.
Yeah.
They really haven't had that. Now they got a great offensive coordinator, I heard, coming in. He was there last year, right?
Yeah, and he got them all the way to 31st on offense.
All right, so maybe I'm thinking of a different team.
I don't see it myself, but hey, what do I know? I'm a guy with a day job at a voodoo doll. Shout out to Mike J for the super chat. I just don't see where people look at the Giants and say that the Giants are going to be, the second best team in the division and yada, yada, yada.
I don't see them being the second best, but I can see them being a fantasy value across the board at all positions. So that's something I do a lot is I look at NFL versus fantasy. So, I got my books, my stats, things like that. I can look at how many plays under center, run versus pass balance, man versus zone usage, things like that. But at the end of the day, what you see is real. So if you see a good player, he's probably a good player.
Gotcha.
And good in the NFL doesn't necessarily mean good for fantasy and vice versa.
Okay. All right. Well, you guys.
Opportunity is sometimes more important than talent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys have given me a lot to think about here with fantasy football. And one more question before we get ready to get out of here. So, training camps for the Cowboys and things will start in about 3.5 weeks, because, of course, we're playing the Hall of Fame game. Everybody else will open up the week after that. When do fantasy drafts typically start taking place for redraft? What?
I'm sorry. I've been drafting since February, but...
Okay. For the idiots like me that are just getting started or, people that are just getting their feet wet, in new leagues. I know it's closer to the season, so are we talking about week 2 of the preseason or when are you looking at doing most of those drafts?
Technically, redraft has already kicked off. That Scott Fishbowl started already, right, Ross?
Yeah, Scott Fishbowl has kicked off. The Podathon is in July.
which is kind of an official kickoff to the redraft season, if I'm not mistaken there. But for the most part, I try to get my league that I run, which is 125 Jobu wings apiece. I try to wait until a week or two before the season starts.
Explain to me hold on.
You're going to do that in about 2 hours, knock it out that day.
Explain to me the Jobu wings.
Gambling's not legal in Texas.
Okay.
So let's say I was in Vegas gambling $125 here in Texas.
Okay, no, I was just wondering if I have to deliver Jobu wings someplace in Texas.
No. I'm trying
Stu, take a breath. Gambling's not legal, but this is a game of skill. It's not technically gambling. You know what I'm saying?
Different incentives for fantasy football, and I always have incentives that make me happier at the end of the day when I win. And instead of referring to it in dollars and cents, I refer to it in terms of Jobu wings.
Well, Corey has a point there, because it was funny, because I was down in the country in Virginia here, and I went into 7-Eleven and I'm seeing slot machines. I was like, when did slot machines become legal in Virginia? They said they're not slot machines, they're skill games. I was like,
Pennsylvania did the same thing.
Like, the fuck? But now, of course, in Virginia, you have actually online gambling and stuff on your apps and stuff. And so even this is where it's even crazier that the Washington football team, or whoever they're going to be, will actually have gambling at the stadium game days. And you can bet with the Capitals, the Wizards, and the Nationals and stuff at the stadiums. Crazy.
Well, right now there's daily fantasy that goes right up until kickoffs. So they're just trying to compete with that industry. And to be honest, the industry is big. Why not get a cut of the money if you're a team? You know, I mean, that makes a business logic sense.
Well, it makes a hell of a lot of sense, because they're not technically managing. It's just like, we're just getting our cut.
Right.
And when you start thinking about NFL teams are actually going to get as much as the gate revenues just from gambling, oh, fuck, that's a lot of money.
And if they, you know, I don't know who does this, but if they expand to maybe a little bit of outdoor side machines for tailgaters, you know, they could grow and grow and grow.
Yeah.
You could have little booths outside, you know?
Well, this is true. Well, and you think about, like, the Chicago Bears actually are looking at buying a racetrack that's outside the city of Chicago, and possibly by 2024 having a
that's
new
so they can
stadium.
learn to run the ball.
Well, it'll be a new stadium / casino. So you're seeing the evolution of football, where it's just like, damn the torpedoes. We're just in here to make as much fucking money as we can.
Real quick on the redraft league drafting season, the more money involved, it's either earlier in the year, as in pre-NFL draft, or it is the last 2 weeks before kickoff.
Okay.
All right. The smaller the money gets to the free leagues are all pretty much July and August, all through the preseason. There's not a specific time frame. You'll actually see ESPN crash generally the last week of the final week before kickoff.
Last week in August.
ESPN will have lags because they've got so many drafts going on.
Okay.
For purposes of like what we'll be doing with the Discord community and Jobu leagues that we're going to do, the Mark's whole aspect of fantasy football for dummies basically going to be kind of standard, if you will, and not get too complicated, because we want to teach people, get them more involved, maybe expand on that next season. But one of the advantages of those leagues waiting to the end is it's typically newer people learning, and you want to make sure you know your injuries, your trades, people are opting out, stuff like that. For me, and I'm going to guess Roz would say the same, one of the reasons people draft so early on the opposite end of that, if you're a little bit deeper into fantasy football and you know a little bit more about what's going on, you can actually, there's higher risk, but you can take advantage of what's called ADP, the average draft positions, where you can get guys really cheap earlier in the year. And the closer you get to the season, like Zeke, you were talking about Zeke, people are off him, but the closer we get to the season, the more people see Zeke's been busting his ass with Tony Pollard and looking good out there, he's going to be a little bit more favored than he was 2, 3, 4 months ago when you could have got him at a little bit of a cheaper price than you're going to pay for him now. So that's why
I'm going to tell you a secret, and I need you to write this down.
We got a secret. Okay, got my pen. Got my Cowboys pen now. Okay, this is America's team pen.
ADP, average draft position. Bogart mentioned that and talked about it a lot.
Uh-huh.
It is 75 to 90% accurate of how a player will finish the season or finish the first 4 weeks of a season.
Okay.
If you drafted strictly off of ADP, you have a relatively good chance to start out your first 4 games well.
Okay.
So if you're sweating things, if you're stressing at the last minute, you're thinking, I really need Zeke. Look at ADP.
Mm-hmm.
Is Zeke up there? If he's up there, go with your gut. Trust it. Because ADP, the industry, the community, balances out that early year drafting all the way through what Stu is talking about with the injuries and the preseason games and camps. And it balances out to meet what they actually start out the year being, because they're all healthy.
Mm-hmm.
All the schemes are good. Offenses have the advantage over defenses because they got, they know the play call. There's the first 4 weeks of the season is a piece all by itself.
Hang on for 1 second.
Draft by ADP.
I've got a flea here. Philly D.
Situation requires is a whole lot more, and you shut your ass up.
Philly D. Damn. You see, you know what, Stu? You jinxed us. You said East Side Herald, and it's just kind of like Beetlejuice.
I didn't say his name 3 times.
Damn, that motherfucker in here. Fantasy and delusional cowgirl fans go together. You know what? I don't know how anybody who is a Texans fan think that they have any room to talk. They got one player in the top 100, and he says, fuck y'all, I ain't playing. Okay? Come on, man. Get the fuck out of here, dude. Damn.
Houston still have a team this year?
Well, they should be actually like the Washington football team and lose the football team title. You can't call them a football team anymore. Oh, man. All right, and here we have, okay, I'm going to ask you another question because we got my man Rams loaded and Stafford is ready to roll. Do you believe Matthew Stafford is ready to roll?
I believe we're going to see a different Rams team.
Okay.
Those boys can catch the ball, all of them out there.
Okay.
Okay. I'm now, first off, being a Miami fan, I'm also an FSU homer.
Okay.
So Cam Akers, I actually will pay whatever it costs to acquire him in fantasy because he's FSU and because he's that good. So if the boys catch everything Stafford throws, you might see them make a run at that division.
So you're believing the hype of Matthew Stafford?
I've never doubted his talent. The only thing that's happened is he's
been at the Lions.
Dude gets hurt. Well, the Lions, but he's had broken bone in his back, things like that.
Yeah, if you keep getting him shattered.
If he stays up, if that offensive line protects him, there's no telling what that Rams team could actually do.
Right.
They have the talent available to them offensively. Now, defensively, look, outside Taylor Rapp, Jordan Fuller, and Aaron Donald, they all right.
Well, you got Jalen Ramsey.
Well, yeah, but he doesn't really count because nobody throws at a quarterback that shuts everybody down.
True.
I mean, that's fantasy football. That's one of the worst things you can have is a cornerback with no passing.
Dak did, and we got hosed. We got hosed by an official. Offensive pass interference. Yeah.
Well, look, Dak was the smartest quarterback they picked that year.
Okay. All right. So before we get out of here, we've been in here for an hour and a half, man. And it's about time for me to take some more drugs for this knee right here that I had surgery on. And Stu, it's about time for you to pass the Dutch sheet from the left-hand side too, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Any final thoughts? Corey, do you have a YouTube channel?
Well, not really.
Not really. Okay.
Like I post like family videos, and when I'm videotaping the church choir or something, but it's not like a channel.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any
No, I actually hang out and support the industry. So, the fantasy football astronauts, the fantasy football hustler.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you find somebody out in the industry in some way, I'm trying to support. I just did
Jobu Sports Report.
I can't believe I'm going to do an anonymous. I'm going to say it out loud, but I every year I actually sponsor podcasts in the Scott Fishbowl Podathon. I don't do my own podcast, so I actually pay for them to get airtime.
Nice.
So it brings up the smaller, podcasts and gives them national stage type of thing. So we just did another one of those this year, but that's all I do. Well,
the one thing I'm definitely learning that with fantasy football, I've kind of stayed away from it because, again, to me, it's like the devil. But I'm noticing the family type of a feel from it, that the camaraderie between you guys, that you're all really close knit, and that's a beautiful thing.
And especially considering I'm a sociopath. It's amazing that they can keep me in it.
Okay, with that being said,
come get your advice from crazy people on the Jobu Sports.
Well, we all know I'm kind of crazy. We know that I'm touched. We all know that. Okay, I remember.
We're good.
You're good. You're good. I've gone around the country as an older man with a voodoo doll. Okay, so everybody knows.
I actually used to carry a head in Iraq, a mannequin head. You remember Jon Snow?
Yeah.
All right, I had my head, same mannequin head, same as him.
All right.
And we actually sent it around Iraq.
Security. Oh, all right. Okay, so final thoughts here, Stu. What you got for me? We have homework for next week.
Next week we'll have something that we'll be doing. We'll get those Jobu Sports Leagues. Me and Roz will talk about that. Anybody that was watching today, Roz, his brother Roz inside the Discord community. He'll be the main person helping me out with you guys running the leagues and answering questions. We have other guys in there, Fantasy Football Hustler, and we'll add some more before the season is here. My birthday is tomorrow, so my mind's pretty much focused on that. And I just, on the community aspect, that's what I've been trying to drive this whole time is fantasy football opens you to more NFL experience, makes all the games interesting, and you meet people that you otherwise wouldn't meet that are playing a game based on a game that we all watch and love, the NFL.
Amen on that one. And one final thing I have to add here before we get out of here.
Oh, Roz is awesome.
I fire Howie. Fucking fire. Motherfucker! Stupid motherfucker! What an idiot! What an idiot! Dallas has Amari Cooper and Gallup, but we don't need a receiver. Are you kidding me? I don't want Justin Jefferson. He's ass. He's stupid. I fire his ass. I fire his ass. I mean, Howie's got to be stupid. What are you doing? You just let Dallas take him.
And Stu, you had one final point?
No, I was just going to say, Roz is going to be playing in the league that Alex created for Dream to Walk.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of the ones that kind of helped with that idea come about. And our league is now full. We got Adam Rank in there, James Coe's in there, Marcus Grant's in there. Everybody's joined up, so that draft will be coming soon. I don't know how long that draft's going to take or how I would even record it, but we might just kind of keep up to date on that. I'm not going to make promises that I can't keep, but you bet your ass if I can get Marcus Grant, Adam Rank, James Coe, even Smitty from the Fantasy Football Show on here at some point during the season, we'll do that. We'll have Bogart back. We'll have Alex back, and you'll see a lot of me and Corey throughout the year.
All right, and so definitely check out our Discord channel. Stuart is definitely going to be able to get you your questions and stuff. If you are a channel member, let them know that you are a channel member for that extra access and stuff. But you guys know it's time to turn out the lights. This part is over.
Turn out the lights. The party's over. They say that all good things must end. Call it a night. The party's over.